elementary school, and my mom pulled me aside and was like, hey, you're going to be going to school now, and everyone believes in Santa Claus. Just so you know, he's not real. Don't tell them that. And so for like 5 years, I was
What age did she tell you this?
I mean, probably I was like 5, 6.
That is very early to tell somebody.
I never believed this. She never told me Santa Claus was real. She was like, hey, I think it was just she didn't want to like go through the work of all the theatrics.
She's like, I don't want to hide the packages. I don't want to wrap them. I don't want to eat the fake cookies and milk.
Right.
And drink the milk.
So I think that when you're so young and you see all these people that blindly accept Santa Claus is real, and you're like, they all think this guy's so real, and I know he's not. I think that kind of sets you up for questioning everything.
That's so interesting.
Oh.
That's so, because it's so relevant right now. So what I always ask a new guest on the show is, why do you believe people don't believe in conspiracies? Why do they get labeled conspiracy theories, and why does someone like Aaron just so reject it so hard? Why is that?
Well, I think it stems from a couple different things. One, again, with the way we're raised as children, we're told, okay, people that are older than you or have more control than your power, authority, whatever they say is right. So whatever they say, you accept. And if you question it, typically you're chastised as a child. So I think that that's ingrained in us at a young age. And then also, I think as people get older and we start sort of gathering information from different parts of life, like, universities, online, I think there's just, I was reading about universities specifically, and I don't want to sound like I'm completely crazy, but
No, you're following Eddie Bravo, who had me somewhat convinced of flat Earth. So you're totally in a great place.
Yeah.
There is no crazy in this podcast, and it's something else I want to ask you again. But finish your thought.
Yeah, looking at, so if you look at these conspiracy theories and you do trace them back, if you do accept the conspiracy theory, you realize that part of that conspiracy theory is a control of information and a control of education. And so, I think that's why people that accept education blindly, you look at like medical students, for example. I have a couple friends who are doctors and family members who are doctors, and it's a known fact in the medical community that when they go to medical college, or when they go to med school, that they are ingrained to prescribe certain medications, and that those schools are then sponsored by pharmaceutical companies.
Those, yes.
Right, and so it's all a circle, and so you can't, I don't know, I can't speak to why other people don't believe it.
It is something, it's, you talked about how you get chastised. I feel that public schools is just to get you to follow the rules and do what you're told. There is an education thing, but it's not too much. And, because you look at the guy who doesn't follow the rules, they get detention, they get suspended, they get a lot. If they don't play by rules, they get pounded on very hard, and they're singled out very early as that person isn't playing ball. Where the other people, they get, it's like, sometimes if you're book smart doesn't necessarily mean you're smart, meaning that you are just maybe good at retaining knowledge and being able to answer multiple choice questions.
Right. You're taking information and then regurgitating it in the form of tests. Absolutely. And that makes me think of when I was in, I think, junior high, and I definitely, that sort of resistance towards authority was an issue for me, and it still is an issue for me.
Right.
And I've had to sort of try to control it when I'm in a work situation. But I remember in school,
it is hard.
Oh,
it
really
is hard because you're pretty smart. We've talked about it. You're a really high IQ human being, and most of the places you're going to work initially, I know you're doing some big shit now, but like initially, you're going to work with people that you're probably smarter than.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you see the games they're playing. That's the weirdest part, when you see the game that is being played, and you're like, I know what you're doing here.
Yeah, and it's very hard when you're in that position and you have to respect their authority. And I've been in situations where I tried to circumvent it because I could. Like, I would circumvent my boss and go to the CEO, and then that led to them trying to fire me.
Yes.
It's not a good it's not a good path.
Yeah.
Which is, I think a lot of comedians are like that, which is why most comedians can't keep a normal job.
Yes, I got fired about 15 times.
Yeah, it's hard, but
It's not hard. I actually got used to getting fired. I could actually see when it was coming. It was like, can I talk to you in the office? That's when I knew. Danger, Will Robinson. Nobody ever comes back from the office happy. Nobody. It's never coke and hookers and great times. It's pack your shit. You didn't play along. We tried to give you a chance. And it is what it is. I want to ask you something. Now, I'm doing this podcast, and I would love to have you on it anytime you're available. And one thing I'm running into in this podcast is that do I check people when they say stuff that might not, I believe, be 100% true? Now, it's a weird, and like, this is a brand new podcast. It's on a feed that's been around for a while, but the podcast itself is brand new. And I'm running into, do I, like, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm into almost anything except for, it's almost sexual. Like, I'm down with anything except there's that one line, right? Conspiracy theories are like that. I'm really into everything. Flat Earth is where I gotta go, okay, I'm not there.
right. Well,
Yeah.
it depends on, I guess, your audience, and I would assume that most people that listen to this podcast are more intelligent, or they're more aware of what's going on.
You
so
never
I think
know.
if you're going to
The Earth could be
talk
square.
to those people, I would assume that being factually correct, at least logically correct, is important to them. So I would check them.
It's a very interesting, because I want people to come on here and be able to talk freely, because, you know, in a weird way, conspiracy theorists are almost like battered children in a weird way, because, I mean, I have so many people that I love and respect in every other aspect of their life, except when it comes to certain things. And, you know, it's like, what's going on in politics right now is a very big part of that, and which fits into what you wanted to talk about. And, you know, I always ask people, as long as you believe in what you're talking about on the podcast, I can let you go, which is, you know, last week, I do believe Eddie Bravo's a flat earth guy, and that's fine. It's fine. I don't believe, even though I started looking into it, I'm going to have more people onto it. There's this whole theory right now that flat earth, it's popping up everywhere because it's being funded by people who want people to talk about anything but Pizzagate. That's a big thing that's out there right now. This guy, David Seaman, who's like an authority on Pizzagate, he has all these, my sources, you hear this a lot in the conspiracy theory world, my sources say that this is all funded to get people not to talk about Pizzagate.
You know when someone's a next level conspiracy theorist? When they have conspiracy theories about conspiracy theories.
That's how it goes, totally. And that's kind of what's going on right now. Now, we talked about a bunch of stuff you wanted to talk about. You did the rant tours with me, and we kind of got into a little bit. It's very interesting because, you know, it's like there was a whole bunch of different personalities on the show, and not all of them agree with it. So you gave me a list of stuff you wanted to talk today. You kind of want to talk about New World Order.
More specifically, like the Rothschild banking system.
Okay, because I really like this, because I think this is a very big situation right now that's going on with Trump and his candidacy, and a lot of stuff that I'm seeing in real time is going on. That you have to be into it. You have to have information. Now, a lot of the information you're going to hear during this hour, you will not hear on ABC News. You will not hear on NBC, Fox, MSNBC, any of the alphabet stations, because they're all owned by pieces of the same people. I want to start this off by, and this is for Aaron too, this conversation about the Rothschilds is not anti-Semitism, okay? And you're going to hear that very quickly when someone's going to go, oh, this is international bankers, this is anti-Semitism, and it's my feeling that it's done by people very high up to get the people very low to fight for them, thinking they have commonality going on here. If that's even a word I use, I might have made it up, but it fit what I was doing. So the people up top make the people believe down below that they're all one group.
Absolutely, and actually, I was reading about this recently, that the Rothschilds actually formed, I can't remember the long form name, but like the NLP group or something to do with defamation of, like, essentially an organization devoted to stopping anti-Semitism and
Anti-Defamation League.
Right.
Is that it? Yes.
The Anti-Defamation League.
Which, by the way, our good friend Ari Shafir is on their watch list.
That's really funny.
Yes. Ari Shafir, a long time ago, got hit up. Someone hit them up. They're like, we know who this Ari Shafir is. We have been watching him for a while.
So they were started by the Rothschilds.
100%.
Yeah.
100%, and that's what like in common terms, it's like LeBron James crying about racism, like trying to equate what he has going on in his life and the difficulties to a guy Eric Gardner who gets choked out selling cigarettes on the corner. You just got $1 billion from Nike. You're both black, but one has wealth and one is just trying to survive. It's like Beyonce crying on the Grammys the other day. But the Rothschilds are very interesting, and I also want to get into the Rothschilds are very big. Not as big, but supposedly working with them are the Rockefellers. Now, the reason I bring up the Rockefellers is because the Rockefellers are Protestant. They own Chase Bank. They're Protestant. So right there kills all the anti-Semitism that's going on. There are people who happen to be Jewish that are in power positions, but because they're not bad people because they're Jewish. They're bad people because they're doing evil shit to their fellow man. My best friend Dave delivers food. He's Jewish. He's 40. He runs nothing except your pizza delivery order. That's all he runs. There's nothing. So really kill that right off the bat. So.
Oh yeah, I'm not an anti-Semite.
No, not at all, and I am not either. And but people do that to stop the conversation.
Right. Well, and so the how do you say it again?
Anti-Defamation League.
Right. So they actually, whenever university professors try to talk about the central banking system and relate it back to the Rothschilds, if you do look this up, you'll realize that a lot of the information is very hard to find. It's very scattered, and they've done this on purpose. And so, anyway, whenever university professors try to even tap into the subject, they're always attacked. Oh, these people are anti-Semites. Like, how dare they do this? And so that's definitely been a tactic that they've to try to decrease information that's available.
100%. Now, the reason I bring up the Rothschilds is because, and I don't know her name, and I'm not going to look it up right now, but one of the daughters of the Rothschild was a huge supporter of Hillary Clinton, which means big donorship and all that stuff. And now we have a situation in which Trump gets in, okay, wasn't expected to get in, somehow people got in, and I would tell people, be very cautious before you start looking at Trump as your white knight. I'm not saying he's I would say the same thing if my dad was president. I'm like, my dad's born in the 40s, has a certain way of looking at the world. Just because he's not an insider doesn't mean that he's a white knight. He's just not an insider. For as much as a billionaire Trump is, he's not one of the good old boys.
Right, and he doesn't have that much money compared to, the families that rule the world they've thrown out ballpark numbers that I think are a bit aggressive.
500 trillion.
500 trillion. I think if you say that to anybody, I think most people are like, oh, these people are crazy. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that, if Carlos Slim woke up, it's like that joke that Chris Rock has. If Carlos Slim woke up and had Trump's money, it's like that Oprah joke he has. Oprah joke, if he woke up and had that money, he would kill himself.
Yeah.
Having, $8 billion is not a lot of money, and it doesn't mean that you are a part of these exclusive groups, if that's what you would call them.
100%. So, do you want to get into the start or kind of the power that they have right now, and then go back, or how do you want to do it?
Well, I think like the original, so the patriarch of the Rothschild family, he and his first sons are sort of like the basis of everything. So I think probably start there and then go into what it's become.
Okay.
Okay, so Mayor Rothschild is the OG Rothschild.
Right.
And
he started very, very young.
Very young. And I think he was born in, I believe it was like 1720.
100, yeah.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. Very young. I mean, like, he was supposedly working at a bank at about, correct me if I'm wrong, like 12 years old. Like 12, 13 years old. This is before child labor laws and all that stuff. He started working very early in I think
banking.
His father wanted him to become a rabbi. He's like, F that. I'm going to go and I'm going to intern at this bank. And he learned banking at 12 years old.
Right, so he's a prodigy. He's
Right.
obviously very intelligent. And again, correct me, because you're definitely more of an expert on check my facts if I get this wrong. And so then he started consulting for German royals, I believe.
Yes.
And he set up a bank with them, and I think it was like 1760. And then he ended up having, I believe it was four male children, who then left and moved to different parts of Europe and set up their own sort of banks.
He was the first, and we'll get corrected by somebody. There was something about the Rothschilds where they were the first to set up a banking system in which their own family could run everything. And he had a very strict rule, which was only the males get to run and make business decisions.
And inherit money.
Yes.
Even Rothschild women, I don't know if that's still true today, but back then Rothschild women were not allowed to inherit money either, so they ended up a lot of times marrying back into the family, so they would like marry cousins, and so they built this sort of like incestuous conglomerate.
And then you can tell by how they look, they are not pretty people. They are not pretty. The royals aren't good looking. Like, the royals had to start fucking other people because it was getting not good looking. You see pictures of any of the Rothschilds, not attractive at all. They got that weird, like, the King's Speech, the fucking, the Crown on fucking Netflix, that really unattractive, pasty white look. And that's what happens when you bang your cousins a lot.
Yeah, no, a lot of them are kind of cross-eyed for sure.
So, the big move, I believe, and I don't want to rush through this if we're jumping too much, had to do with the French-English War.
Right, with Napoleon.
Is it now I'm jumping anything? Or you...
No, I think that you're right on. And so that was sort of like the first move that helped them, sort of acquire all their wealth. So what happened was that so two of his sons moved. One moved to Paris, and another one moved to London. And so when Napoleon started this war, the brother that was in Paris was like, oh, I'll help fund you on this war. And then he called his brother in London and was like, hey, do you want to fund the British royal side? Because we'll fund both sides of this war.
So they funded both sides of this war.
And what ended up happening is that, and this is ended up, I mean, they've essentially funded most wars to this date
which we'll
since
get
then.
into that too.
Right. But so what happened, and which is, I mean, it's smart. Essentially what they did is when they were funding both sides of the war, they're like, okay, well, which side winning is most beneficial for us? Let's make sure that side wins. So they decided that the British royal family winning would be most beneficial to the Rothschild family, because then the royal family would be indebted to them. And so the brother in Paris started decreasing the funding of Napoleon's army, so that they started having less resources and ended up losing the war. And simultaneously, while this is happening, the brother that was in London backing the royal family knew that they were going to win. And so he ended up selling off some of his stocks and bonds.
He basically, what happens is that, from what I've read, correct me if I'm wrong on YouTube and everything, is that they pull out the money out of France, and France loses the war. But the Rothschilds run back and tell everybody in England that the British lost. Right. And that they start selling off their bonds, and a panic happens.
And it causes a crash.
Everybody sells their bonds, and then the Rothschilds come back and buy all the bonds at pennies on the dollar, the pound. Mm-hmm. And now they own the country.
Right.
They're basically owning the country.
Right, and then they've sort of replicated this system several times, and they've done this with pretty much every war, and they've capitalized on every economic crash in every major, every first world country, and so, and now here we are.
Yeah, well, so they basically do that, and then they come to America, and America's a brand new country, and they want to get in on this, and they want to start a Federal Reserve. Now, some people do, and probably the people who listen to this podcast know, that the Federal Reserve is a privately owned company. It is not a government department. And if you listen to this podcast, I hope you realize what the Federal Reserve is. The Federal Reserve is basically the central bank to the United States that basically prints our money.
Right.
And Every dollar you have in your pocket is basically a loan.
And they collect interest.
And they collect interest in that loan. And 3 presidents have tried to get rid of the Rothschilds.
Try to go off the Federal Reserve and
Yes.
go back to the United States having control of their money.
Yeah, and who were I know the 2 are obvious, but who was the first? Was it Jackson?
Jackson, Lincoln, and Kennedy.
Now, what do all those presidents have in common? They all someone tried to assassinate them. 2 out of the 3 worked. Jackson got away, Kennedy got shot, and Lincoln got shot.
They're obviously still mad about Jackson. Didn't they just take him off the coin?
Yeah, they're like, fuck, that's so funny.
It's taken us 100 years. We're going to put a black woman on it.
I didn't even think about that. That's very funny. They're just going to erase him from the whole history by taking him off and putting Harriet Tubman on there. But by the time the money comes out, no one's going to be using cash, which is a big part of their evil plan, too. Go on.
I was just going to say it doesn't make sense to have a president that was impeached on a bill that we still use.
Interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
He wasn't fully impeached, but he was censured or whatever they call it.
Yes.
Whatever they did
He
to
was
Clinton
Bill Clinton?
before. Yeah, he was the first one.
Right, but that was set up by the Rothschilds.
Yeah, yeah.
They're like, oh, we can't kill him? Okay, well...
Dude, and that, I mean, when we get to it, we're going to get into what's going on right now, and then I think this is all a big part of it. So then they don't just have our central bank. They're literally part of almost every country on the planet's central bank.
Yeah, if you look up banks owned by the Rothschilds, you'll see the list. I think there's like 150 some crazy amount of banks.
Yeah, here it is. Banks owned by the Rothschilds. So unbelievable.
And this is factual information. You can't dispute this. So.
I'm just gonna go through a couple of them, and these are all basically central bank, Federal Reserves of these countries. Okay, the Central Bank of Uzbekistan Republic, Central Bank of the Bahamas, Central Banks of Bahrain, Central Banks of Badaro. I don't even know where the fuck that is. Okay, Central Bank of Belize, Central Bank of West African States. Look at the Central Bank of Bolivia. That's where the cocaine is. Central Bank of Bosnia. I mean, we can just go on forever. All these central banks. Central Bank of China. I mean, and you just go on, and you're right, it's 100 banks. Now, there was also this notion, countries without Rothschild's banks. And that's a big thing, too, because it was, do you know the countries?
No, but I'm assuming that they get attacked all the time, right? Because
Yes!
they're probably trying to invade them.
Without central banks. Yes! Okay? And this is it, dude. This is where it starts getting real fucking interesting, Aaron. Okay? By the time Al Magical kicks me out of the studio, you will be unfucking plugged, homeboy. Okay? Because here it is. It's Libya, North Korea, Iran, at one time Iraq, Yemen, Afghanistan, Iran, did I already say that? Well, I want to say it fucking again. Syria. Russia just kicked them out. Okay? Like, what do all those countries have in common right now? We are bombing them, with the exception of Iran, and we are ramping up for that. There is a real strong case that most of our wars have to do more with us doing the bidding of the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and all these other power groups, but mostly the Rothschilds, that our defense is really just an offense. And it should,
Yeah, I 100% agree.
It's ridiculous. Aaron, look at me. Do you understand what we're talking about? That we are bought and sold?
Sure.
You want to hear a crazy thing? Guess who owns the IRS? Who do you think owns the IRS?
Does it start with R as well?
Well, it's actually, they can't come out and do that. So it's the World Banking Organization and the International Monetary Fund. They own our IRS. It is not a U.S. government department. We pay taxes to a foreign entity.
Which is also crazy. I was reading about they were prosecuting some Swiss banks for tax evasion from the IRS. So which is so weird because they were prosecuting Rothschild banks. So it's weird that their IRS is like trying to get money, but then they're at the same time they have banks hiding money.
Is it weird if you're putting on the persona that it's an independent thing, that it's not part of this bigger scheme? And what better way to show that than to sue yourself? Would I do that? You ever see in the movies, guys like fakes it, so he's like, oh, boom, and he shoots himself, and they, hey, man, they killed her, and they shot me, I can't believe I lived. You know, the best way to do is to take a little collateral damage, and then, you know, you're like, hey, man, why would we sue ourselves?
Well, right, and I think only one of the 10 banks were, because they were all Swiss banks, I think only one of them were backed by the Rothschilds, and so they probably were like, oh, let's put one of our own in there, but take most of the money out.
Oh, the IMF. The IMF, which is an agency of the UN, which goes back to the New World Order, owns the Treasury and owns the U.S. Treasury is now the IMF. Look at that. And the IMF runs the fucking IRS. New World Order, homeboy. It's deep, dude. Do you see it yet? Do you see it?
I feel like he's been burned out from, 4 episodes. He's like, I don't know the opinions anymore.
Can we get an intern to run this one? I'm just trying to save you, bro. So they own all these central banks, and this is a really big thing going on. I want to get into Trump a little bit on this. Do you think that this ownership of all the central banks and all the media, can we get into the media that they run, and then I want to get into Trump and how that affects Trump?
Oh yeah, I know they back most of the media, right? Except for, do they back Fox too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Here's what they own. They don't own them outright, because that would be so obvious. So they own portions of the companies that own,
right,
like a big chunk, like 20%. They'll buy a big chunk of it, and they'll own the company that owns all the news outlets.
Right. They also the major banks that are backed by the Rothschilds also own most of the every big oil company. They own every big oil company, and they own a large portion of stock in pretty much every Fortune 500 company.
And that, it goes back to Rockefellers. They just bought a giant chunk of 30% of the Rockefeller whole, basically their company, their giant company, which owns Chase Bank. And they were Standard Oil back in the day. Standard Oil. They were one of the first companies the Rockefellers owned. That's yours? That Standard Oil was the first one where they used monopoly laws to break it up into 80 little pieces. And all those pieces was Texaco. You name an oil company, it used to be part of Standard Oil. That's how big and rich they were. They were going to other countries and then making deals with other countries to get their oil companies going. So, the Rockefellers were the first of the really big ones to start thinking multinational, like they do deals with China and all that stuff. Now, the Rothschilds own a piece of that. And then the Rothschild entire media. I love it. Oh, here it is.
One thing, so kind of like going into the media, part of the Rothschild was what they learned from the war between Napoleon and Great Britain was that they benefit from any sort of any sort of problem,
yes,
or a disagreement between two parties they benefit from. So there's some theories that they sort of push for diversity, and they almost create two different ideologies to have them fight. And so one of the theories is that they created sort of the left and the right wing of the American, of American politics. So
you ever hear the theory that the Rockefellers funded feminism, that they created feminism and funded it because they knew, and don't take this the wrong way, that they knew that they could manipulate females emotionally, and that the whole key was to make them emotional, just fucking train wrecks that deal with everything emotionally. And in a weird way, we're kind of there right now, where emotions are facts, and not just women, just across the board, where it's like this super progressive social justice warrior thing, and it's like emotions, everything's emotion. So yeah, they funded that, and we'll get to the. So in the 90s, people don't realize, out of nowhere, the government, spearheaded by the Clintons, deregulated the media. And nobody knew why they did it. Before they deregulated the media, and this is very important, when they deregulated media, there were 80 media companies. 80 media companies. It is now down to 6 companies own all 90% of the major media outlets. So when Hillary Clinton's running and you see Univision go and buy The Onion, people flip the fuck out.
Right.
And everyone laughed at it. They're like, oh, dude, ha, 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 Univision, the Mexican company, the Spanish-speaking company, now owns The Onion. That's hilarious. No, because guess who owns Univision?
NBC, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, that's why you see companies all the time. Huffington Post, bought out.
Right.
And it just changed. You know who else got bought out? TMZ got bought out. And that game changed completely. When they destroyed Tom Cruise, Hollywood won't, whoa. Because, you know, all the studios, let's go down the list of companies. And if I'm hijacking what you're talking about,
No, go for it.
please tell me to go fuck myself. Okay? So these are the companies. Wake up, Aaron. I know you're trying to sleep this off. Okay? This is the real shit. We're just trying to help you understand that you're being ran by, you're a fascist slave, okay?
Aaron, I have one question. I've been thinking about this for the last 30 minutes. That Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shirt you're wearing,
Yeah.
Did you sleep in that last night?
No, he's got a wonderful wife. He's got a wonderful wife.
What does that have to do with this shirt?
Well, she wouldn't let him sleep in a shirt and then go out with it.
Yeah, no.
Aren't your men kind of staples of your fashion sense? Would you let your man go out dressed like shit?
I mean, he has really good fashion sense, but
He
I don't know.
does. You don't think he does?
I feel like you're putting me in an awkward position right now. But
You're okay. This deviated quickly.
back to the
The
media
Rothschild.
companies.
Hey,
I just want you to know I was wearing an Italian.
And you know what? The Rothschilds probably invented Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so fuck you, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
no.
Trying to get into
No,
our
they're
podcast
just trying
room.
to save the world. Sorry, Aaron. She's a frisky one. She doesn't play by the rules. She's a Mensa. Okay? So they own General Electric. What does General Electric own? NBC, MSNBC, CBN, CNBC, Bravo, History Channel, okay? MSNBC. They own part of CBS. What does CBS own? CBS owns 14 stations, 200 affiliates, CBS Network, the Country Music Channel. I don't even know what Group W is. The Nashville Network, okay? They also own part of Viacom. What does Viacom own? Paramount Television, Spalding TV, MTV, VH1, Showtime, The Movie Channel, UPN, Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, Sundance, okay?
And CBS.
Okay? That was Viacom. And they own CBS, yes. And Disney, or ABC. ABC. They own ESPN, the Lifetime Channel. They own A&E, History Channel, E. I mean, they own They own ESPN and the E Channel. They own the Jock Channel and the Gay Guy Channel. Right? They got all dick on lockdown. All right? Time Warner, which just changed to what? Spectrum. Right, Aaron. Why? Because their fucking customer service rating is dog shit. So they just changed their name. See, you get it. What? Here's great. Time Warner, Spectrum owns what? What do they own? By the way, what do they own? They own CNN, HBO, TBS, TNT, Warner Brothers, Cartoon Network, you motherfuckers, okay? HBO, so like, okay, so you own HBO, you own CBS, and we haven't even got to the last one, but trust me, Fox News is on this, MSNBC. You own a big portion of all these.
Right.
You own a big chunk of the message. So when you watch Bill Maher, who I think Bill Maher and I could sit down I don't even smoke weed. I'd smoke weed with them. Sit down, smoke weed, talk about black hookers, and just have a real fucking heart-to-heart, and we're going to agree on 99% of it. But man, him, John Oliver, both take a check. And who signs that check? Fucking Time Warner. And who signs that check? The fucking Rothschilds, man. You know? So when you see John Oliver do a hit piece on third-party candidates, like, there's a reason, man. Like, I love HBO. The programming is amazing. But Bill Simmons got fired. You know why? Because he wasn't taking notes from anybody. He wouldn't do what they told him to.
Right. I used to work at HBO.
Oh, shit. So maybe you're in on it. I've had people on here where I thought were CIA. Are you part of it?
I'm part of
I'm totally
controlling the message. I don't work there anymore.
It's like every Mel Gibson movie from the fucking 90s, by the way.
But I will say that because I worked in development at HBO for a couple years, and I will say that we had very strict rules on messages that our content could have. Like, even dramas, sitcoms, it was very specific, like, no slavery, no this, no that. So, yeah.
And then we're going to get into this, because I think this is very important. Aaron, you're going to need to hear this, and I know you're upset about it, okay? So we go to Time War, we just did this. Here's the next one. News Corp Ltd. What is that? The Fox News Network and Rupert Murdoch. What does he own? Fox TV, 22 stations, 50% of U.S. households, Fox International, okay, Fox Latin, all this shit. They own Fox News, too. They own the L.A. Dodgers. Fox News, okay? So now they got everything on lockdown. So you're telling me that you believe that they are that their whole thing is pit people together.
Absolutely. And because they realize that that sort of fighting sort of creates a not coercion. What's the word? Cohesive, cohesion, whatever. Anyway.
Whatever. You could have used the word. We'd been like, oh yeah, sounds great.
It breaks the system
down. You're the smartest person in the room, so make up. No, Aaron's pretty smart. I'm sorry, Aaron. You took that sensitive. Aaron, we like your shirt. Don't be sensitive. We like your shirt, okay?
Sam has a periodic table shirt on.
Yeah. I have a fucking Velvet Jones, and your chi-chis are hanging out in your Metallica shirt. It's okay. You're allowed. I made that uncomfortable. Why did I make that uncomfortable?
Are they actually hanging out on the side?
They're not.
It's just a little bit of side.
I'm just trying to like
this video
give you a little shit so Aaron feels better, okay? Aaron, how do you feel?
We have both had boobs. How awesome is that?
Oh, God! Everybody in this room has tits, okay? We fine. Be nice to Aaron. He's the only thing keeping me here. I can't lie.
You look like you just woke up. Okay, sorry.
Aaron, she is only kidding, Aaron. You're a wonderful person. Tell Aaron he's nice,
No,
please.
you are. You're really nice. I want to give you a hug. What kind of shoes are you wearing?
These young chicks, they didn't give a fuck. So listen.
Okay, but so... you were talking about the different countries that currently don't have central banks.
But I want to just get into something real quick,
right.
And because it's important what you're talking about. Yes.
Okay.
Is that there are good guys. They've created the good versus the bad, and it all depends on what your perspective is. Okay. So the good, from when I'm growing up, the Democrats were for the people. Mm-hmm. They were for the people. They deal in emotion.
Right.
Your whole thing, equality for everybody. Everybody's good. Everybody should have a chance. Everybody's equal. Then the other side is power, money, greed. That's what they're and the Republicans, the conservatives, can deal all in, blatantly saying all that because that's what their constituents want. Whereas the Democrats cannot deal in any of that. Because their people are all about equality, love. So it's very important that you realize that when you realize what gets reported. So when it comes to Obama versus Trump, I say it all the time. It's like your significant other is cheating on you. And not your real one, but your just made up one. Is cheating on you. Do you want to know about it or don't you want to know about it? If you want to know about it, that's Trump. If you don't want to know about it, that's Obama. Because the media never told you any of this. And I have my friends who are just flipping out about this Russian stuff right now, which I'm not saying none of it's true. I'm saying maybe everything's true. Maybe the Russians are in on this. Maybe Hillary is sucking Saudi fucking royal family dick. Maybe it's all true. But you're never going to hear about it on the Democratic side because they have to keep the persona of pro wrestling going.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Even just if you do accept the fact that these sort of ideologies have been created to fight with each other.
Keep people fighting, keep the peasants arguing with each other.
Right. I was just, when you were talking about that, I was just thinking about, like, abortions, for example. I think sometimes people just accept their party's ideologies without even questioning, being like, why do we have this? Like, why are conservatives pro-life? Like, they're pro-life, they're pro-life, but then when it comes down to, like, vegans, and those are all on the liberal side. Like, if you're pro-life, why aren't you arguing for pro-life of animals? Like, it's so weird how it's so specific. But, when you look at, so the liberal side has definitely been, I think, pushed by the media recently, and so when I was describing that, it's been pushed. So that's kind of been like at universities. This is the new way. This is how we need to be. Like the liberal, like pushing like women's rights and gay rights and all these things. And so if you do accept that the Rothschilds are trying to go into new countries that don't have central banks, and you look at Islam, for example, like they're saying Islam is now a target because they're trying to get in those countries. If you look at the liberal ideology, it's essentially been set up to be everything anti what those countries are and what they stand for, and we're like, oh, this is wrong. We need to liberalize these. We need to liberate these people.
Right.
We need to give them freedom. We need to give them rights. It's not fair.
And they hate our freedoms, and they want to hurt us, and they want to come to us, and the hysteria of that all these people.
And they want to kill the gays, protect the gays. I mean, by the way, I'm bisexual and my boyfriend's black, so I just wanted to be clear that
you are as liberal as they get.
I'm in the middle. I'm agnostic. I have no. So I just want to make sure that everything I say doesn't come off as like racist or something, because I'm not.
Nobody thinks you're racist. You're black guys. I think that's as I think the surest. Like that's my whole thing about Milo right now. I'm not a Milo fan. I don't think he is a fucking warrior for free speech. I think he's contrarian. But to call him a racist is the dumbest thing. When you suck a black dick, that's your get out jail free card. That's my thing. When you take a black dick in your mouth, you are saying everybody's equal. That's my opinion. It's a win-win. So I think you'll be able to forever run for the rest of your life for anything you want, because you've had black guys, and that's fucking cool. And it's good. I actually go back to everything conservatives have ever preached is a lie.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, now if we're going back, it's a Rothschild fucking message, but, gays, being gay is a sin, interracial dating's a sin, doing drugs is a sin, all that stuff, it's just all been a lie to get people to fight over stupid shit. When you actually look, who are some of the coolest people in the world? Biracial, bisexual, pot smokers, okay? They're pretty laid-back human beings, and they're all good-looking, and they're smart, and they don't, they don't get sick as much. If you believe in Darwinism...
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It totally makes sense to have interracial dating.
Mm-hmm. It strengthens genes. Yes, theoretically, if you look at, like, Richard Dawkins' book, Selfish Gene, he wrote, I think it was in the 70s or 80s, and... more
are you dating black guys scientifically? Is that why you do it scientifically?
Don't tell him that about it. My father doesn't seem to see it that way.
Yeah, that is so weird. That is so weird. It's like, damn you. But let's get into the wars,
right?
Because I think it's very important, and then I want to get into what I think is going on with Trump. So tell me about the Rothschilds and these wars.
Well, I mean, I don't have any I think you probably have more specific.
Well, the whole thing is that if there's they want to put central banks everywhere, and there's those countries that we talked about, and these central banks, and it's been basically, if you look at the 7 wars that Obama has us in, which is something they never talked about, it goes back to what I'm saying, good versus evil. Everybody's mad because Trump is getting rid of all these people, even though I don't know how many have been deported, a couple. Dude, let's all acknowledge that Black Jesus set the record. He put the high score up of fucking almost 3 million fucking deportations. That is more than all the rest of the presidents in front of him combined.
Nobody talks about it.
Nobody talks
you were
about it.
Black Jesus, you're talking about Obama, right?
Yes, Black Jesus. He was going to save us. He walked on water.
Right.
And it's like the Manchurian candidate. We wanted change so badly that they fast-tracked this dude.
Well, yeah, I mean, Obama, it's interesting because, you know, he is very charismatic, and I love watching him speak.
He is like what I call the pop comedy comics that the girls all go goo-goo for. They're all the good-looking guys who talk about, girls, why you do this? Girls, why do you do it? You're always doing this, you're doing this. Girls like, why do we do that? And then they're just running through puss, kicking chicks out, not giving a fuck.
I feel like you're only talking about one particular comic.
No, I'm talking about
I feel like you're talking a specific comic.
No, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. I don't hate anybody but Dan Cook, but the rest of them I love. But I'm just saying there is this pattern, and that's why I feel like Obama was. And that there is, and it's like, if you criticize black people, if anything, whether it's valid or not, you're a racist.
Right, and then even if, what bothers me is that, I mean, you have like comics like Ty Rivera, who is a gay Hispanic, who was a Trump supporter, and people are like, oh, why do you hate yourself? Why do you hate your own race? Why do you, and to assume, instead of like engaging in logical debate and trying to pull up empirical evidence to support your idea, or ideologies, people were just like attacking immediately. They just try to attack the person instead of what they're talking about. And, like Obama, that's another perfect example of how the media distorts reality. Is that, while Obama's running in office last 8 years, he spent, I think it was $10 trillion in 8 years, which was more than all of the presidents combined ever. And when the media was reporting on this, they were saying, oh, well, the deficit is decreasing. The deficit is decreasing. But most people don't know the difference between the national debt and the deficit. The deficit is we had a deficit of negative $500 billion, I think, last year. People are like, oh, it's only negative $500 billion. People thought the national debt was $500 billion. Like, most people, a lot of liberals, intelligent people who were like, oh, it's fine. I'm like, how do you not know the deficit versus the debt? We should not be clapping, celebrating that we have a negative balance, spending balance of $500 billion. For the first 3 years of Obama being in office, I think it was like a negative $1.2 trillion. Something crazy, and that's not something to be celebrated, and people, but we didn't focus on that. Oh, he decreased the deficit. And ironically, I mean, and then that again ties into the Rothschilds, because who benefits from us spending so much money? It's them. They own the banking system.
This brings us to a very interesting point in this fucking conversation. Why are the Rothschilds and the central bank so important to what's going on right now? And it's a little thing called petrodollars. Bump, 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 bump. Sounds like something you see on, The Price is Right. You go in petrodollars. No, man. Petrodollars is this. During the Nixon administration, those couple years that he was in, our deficit was insane. Because the Federal Reserve, the Rothschilds, were printing more money than they had gold to back it up. It was like 3 to 1. And they were freaking out, and they had to do something. So they did something, and I don't know the exact name of it. And if you do know, just put it in the YouTube comments, please, so everyone can hear it. They did a deal with the Saudi Arabians, which was they were going to back our dollar up with Saudi oil. And what does that mean? There's unlimited oil, so that's unlimited dollars to spend. So now, all of your trade right now, when oil is traded, it is traded in U.S. dollars, meaning every barrel is sold at a U.S. dollar amount. It's not the pound, it's and it's not gold. It's the U.S. dollar, which backs our economy. Now, I'm not smart enough to tell you how that works, how it backs it up, any of that stuff. But I know that. Do you know how it works?
No, I didn't even know this existed.
Yes.
This is fascinating.
So that's where the dollar is. So we are indebted to Saudi Arabians and the Rothschilds, okay? Which brings us to right now. Now, people are flipping out that if Hillary got elected, and this all has to do with Saudi Arabia, okay? Yemen, they discovered a huge amount of oil in Yemen. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Yemen might be landlocked. Okay? They need to get the oil. They need to get the water. The Baltic Sea. The quickest way to do that is to go through Syria. So the Saudis were working with the Yemens, and they wanted to build this pipeline through Syria. Syria wouldn't do this because that would fuck Russia. Now, why does Russia not want this pipeline to go? Because Russia gives Europe 30% of its energy. So if you put this pipeline, they're not going to need that oil from Russia, and that's going to devastate Russia's economy. But if this pipeline doesn't come through, China, Russia, Iran, Syria, Iraq, Libya all want to create a brand new federation like OPEC, their own OPEC, in which they were going to trade oil on the gold standard, which would devastate our economy.
Right.
So this goes back, and this is boring if it is, I'm sorry. This is where we're at right now. We are in someone's got to give. It's two gorillas going at it, okay? We can't go in there and go, we can't take out Assad. We can't do it. We are part of agreement. We're the first power. We don't assassinate. So we do it for other people. This war, Syrian war, is also between Iraq and Saudi Arabia, Shiites versus Sunnis. And they hate each other. And they're having a proxy war right now in Yemen. It's Qatar.
Which who knows if that whole argument was started by the... I mean, I bet if you looked it up, somehow maybe that whole fight has been exacerbated because they want them to destroy each other because then the whole economy...
That's a theory about Israel. Put Israel right in the middle there. Everybody can't focus. They just want to focus on Israel, not focus on coming together.
Right.
So that's the whole thing. And the reason they didn't want Hillary... The reason the world didn't want Hillary in, because she was going to enforce a no-flight zone. What? No more tail? Okay. They wanted to floor. I thought you were like, don't talk about it. They're listening. Okay. They thought Hillary was going to enforce a no-fly zone, which would have been war. And that's why I think you're seeing a real hard push right now for the Russia and Trump connection. Right. Even though there hasn't been one actual email brought up, it's all hearsay. Oh, I have a source. These guys have been meeting with these people, and you talked about leaks earlier. I think that is so fucking deep that everybody around Trump is fucking in on it. I think Pence realized he's a heartbeat away from being the president.
Right.
And they don't know where the leaks are coming from. I'm telling you, it's someone very close to Trump that is releasing all this crazy shit. And you don't know what's real anymore. You don't know. Because it's all the same news telling you, and it's all owned by the Rothschilds.
Right, and now Facebook, I mean, I think a large portion of Facebook was also bought by them, and so now Facebook, they are censoring news. I know people, this is so crazy, I know people who, like I said, I'm in the middle, I'm a libertarian, so I don't really identify with either party, but I know people on the right who are more pro-Trump, who, when they post on Facebook, I know even some comics who even just do jokes that are actually left, but then they do jokes that act like they're on the right. Their accounts get shut down, and they're not able to log in their account. Like Facebook is now trying to
It's Facebook jail.
Yeah,
that's what they call it.
They're trying to control people on Facebook, which is crazy.
Which is going to be how you end up leaving Facebook. That's what's going to really fucking happen.
All the jokes I post on Facebook are all neutral, so I always get pretty good visibility because I don't think people can tell if it's right or left. But
I think all this, I don't think he's perfect. I think it's really crazy to think that a 70-year-old man who went through the Cold War and World War II. Did he go through World War II? No, he didn't go. He's too young for that.
Yeah, he was.
But he came out through that whole thing, Cold War, that he would just sell to the United States. I don't think he's a white knight, but he would sell out. I think the only honest thing that you could say between him and the Russians is they offered him 20% of the Russian state-owned oil company, which is a lot of money, dude. When you think about the 30% of that energy to Europe, that's a lot of money.
Right. Well, I think it's I think I have a lot of respect. I don't say I have a lot of respect for Russia, but I admire, I admire, um, I would say Putin. It's Putin. I always say it wrong. I admire Putin if you watch his interviews. He really, to me, he seems like he really cares about Russia, and to me, he seems like he wants peace. He doesn't, he did a private sort of, like, not a convention, but like like he did a press release essentially with like 12 independent news reporters not tied to NBC because they obviously wouldn't show it.
Right.
Anonymous was one of them, and he's like, this is before Clinton and Trump were elected, or before Trump was elected, and they were still vying for the candidacy, and he said, I really want peace, and the U.S. right now is putting more missiles by Russia.
100%.
And they're saying that it's for Iran. He's like, you're already in a deal, so why are you putting more missiles there? It makes no sense. He's like, we're not stupid. We know what you're doing. They were trying to engage in a war with Russia. And, like you said, Russia pulled out or is pulling out of the Federal Reserve. And I think Trump may try to. Who knows? I mean,
no, he's already said it. And that, like we talked earlier, is the surest sign
that he's not backed by the Rothschilds, and that would also probably prove why the media has been so against him.
Do you see a Red Scare going on right now? The classic Red Scare. If you guys want to watch it, watch Oliver Stone's Untold Stories of U.S. History, and you will see there is a playbook that comes of the fear of the Russians. Get everybody geared up, because the Russians are coming, even though the Saudis are the ones who's funded all this crazy ass shit. I mean, we're talking about everybody's angry at the Russians. Our connections to the Saudis are crazy, dude.
Oh yeah.
Like Huma, do you ever look into Huma?
Yes.
And like
she was running Hillary's campaign, and all of her family are like extremists.
Yes, very high up at the Muslim Brotherhood, and this guy tried to convince me it's a charity think tank. I'm like, you're nuts. And that's why the second batch of emails, people went nuts, because they found it on Huma's computer, classified evidence. And going back, we'll wrap it up here in a few, Aaron, going back to Syria and how ISIS is, why is Russia fighting ISIS? Like, they're both our enemies. Why are they fighting each other? That's like Batman going, why is the Goblin fighting Lex Luthor?
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
They would come together and fight us if we were their
but
enemy.
They're fighting each other because, and this goes back to Benghazi, and everyone's upset about Benghazi, and they make it about emails, and it's not about emails on a private server or a public server. It's about the fact that that guy in the U.S. Embassy knew that we were training ISIS, supplying him with weapons, and possibly giving them chemical weapons.
Oh, we have. We've been giving them white phosphorus, and you know who makes the white phosphorus?
Who?
Monsanto.
See, and that's the whole thing,
Monsanto develops all of the GMO food, and they're like taking over the agriculture. I mean, that's a whole nother episode.
We'll
I
do
could
that
go
one
so
too.
deep into that with.
We'll do that one on very soon.
But it would be It's going to be interesting to see if the U.S. tries to pull back from the Federal Reserve. I don't even know if it's possible at this point because it's so intertwined. But I think the last large country, first world country that pulled back from the Federal Reserve was Germany. Hitler pulled out of the Federal Reserve. Pulled out of the central banking system. Did you know that?
Did you ever hear that? There's a theory that he was a Rothschild.
No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that's a conspiracy out there too.
But then why would he pull back from the central banking system?
It's all part of the game, dude. There's actually theories that they're behind the whole big thing. And that if that bad thing happens with 6 million, allegedly, no, only kidding, 6 million Jews, that there's this whole, pushback against anti-Semitism, and that it would allow all this stuff that's happened now. I'm not saying, listen, dude, when people go, oh, dude, are you saying this is going on? Our government behind this? I'm like, I'm not saying that anything's going on. I'm just saying, look at what was gained from what happened. Since the 2001, 9/11, our Pentagon has spent almost $14 trillion lost or spent on war. Now, Dude, 3,000 people lost, and that's really. And now there's this whole thing. Have you heard about Vault 7? There's this whole thing that WikiLeaks is going to put out something that the whole part of 9/11 and this. Aaron, hold on. The reason Building 7's important is because all the bullion and gold that the Nazis had fucking stolen was moved to that building. And that was in the basement. And that's what that was all about, is putting that whole thing down because there was so much gold in there. That's what's going on the internet right now. It is so deep, this Rothschild thing. And that's why I think they're going after Trump so hard, because he wants killing all this free trade deals. Mention getting rid of the Rothschilds and the federal thing. And dude, this Pizzagate shit. In the last 3 weeks, Aaron, the last 3 weeks, you doubted me. Almost 1,000 pedophiles have been arrested, and they just shut down a giant international child orphanage that was stealing kids. And they just shut it down yesterday. It was a huge arrest, and there's more coming, dude. And I think they're going to blame it all on Anthony Weiner. I think he's going to be the guy that takes the big fall, and he ends up dead. And you can hear it here. That's my honest opinion. That was a great... Everyone always goes, Sam, talk about one subject. We did it. You know, Vanessa, I love having you on the show. I know you do another podcast, but if you ever want to be on this one more regular, you are more than welcome to be. Okay? And
I think you better do some fact checking.
So I have another podcast called The Morbid
Why?
Report, and we talk about really disturbing world news.
Federal
Conspiracy.
Reserve Bank was created in
It's supposed to be a
1912,
comedy podcast.
and it's controlled by 12 banks in the United States. The
Well,
IRS
that's
is owned.
it's all conspiracy. It's not. Some of it they're saying is facts, but most of it's all conspiracy.
The IRS was developed in the mid-1800s
How do you know?
it's owned by the federal government.
How do you know?
I just looked it up.
What's that?
I just looked it up.
You just looked it up, but who's to say that what you looked up is factual?
This
And
is
that's
true,
what they're getting at.
But
That's the whole thing. Is
from listening to them, they're off the wall.
well, I mean, it's a fun topic.
Yeah, but
I mean,
when
they're
you
fun
get
topics,
people
that's all they are.
believing stuff like
Well,
that,
no, and he says
they-
from the beginning of the podcast to not really rack your brain or let it like ruin your life. It's just fun to think about stuff like that.
right, but
He's not like
by the
trying
time you're
tell
into it, he has everybody so
He's just a comedian that decided to do his conspiracy podcast. That's all he is.
right. But I mean, people will get wound up and wrapped up in it,
I think
and
that-
it becomes the real thing to them.
I think the people that listen to his podcast are smarter than that.
I don't know. I tend to believe in the dumbing down theory of people.
Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses.
Oh, this is true. Very true. But going, some of the things that he was saying, I'm going, that's not what I remember from history.
Well, yeah, and that's pretty much what they're talking about.
So
Is what you were taught.
now he did because I did look up the Rothschild family, and okay, they brought a lot of that stuff forward correctly. As of 2015, the English were still paying the Rothschild Rothschild holders for financing the fight between France and England.
Oh, really?
Yep, they're still paying for it.
All because that's so stupid. That's such bullshit.
Yeah, but that's what happens when people become gullible. And if somebody tells something in such a believable, vivid way that it brings you in, you're going to believe it. And I mean, we've all been, I don't know if I want to say guilty of it. Yeah, I guess I could, because we've all believed something that kind of was sold to us as we listened to it or read it or whatever, and then found out to be wrong afterwards. I mean, it's happened to all of us. But at the time we were listening to it, this sounds, it sounds believable, it sounds real, there's some ugly animals in this thing.
Yep.
No, there was quite a bit of the stuff that he was saying about the Rothschilds and intermarrying and only the males could be heirs and all of that stuff that came up in the various sources that I looked up in there. They still own a lot of stock in the
They're supposed to be one of the
Central
richest people
European
in the
Bank.
world.
Pardon?
So I guess they're supposed to be one of the richest in the world, I guess.
It didn't say that, but by looking, as a family, the family is big now. I mean, they started out in Germany, you know, small, and through over the years, they've, grown to be a larger family. So, yeah, the family wealth is probably could be one of the top in the world.
And that's pretty much what they're getting at, is that they have control of a lot of things that they could use to do like subliminal messages and like controlling a certain amount of or a group of people because they have a plan for the world, and that's pretty much the whole thing that they were getting at, is that these really wealthy people have a plan for us, and that's
Have that kind of power.
they pull strings to get what they want in the world.
See, it didn't. When the several places that I looked at the Rothschild family. It didn't get into all the individual holdings. It did say that they are still, a major. They hold major shares in the European Central Bank. Um, they didn't say about the banks in other places. Our bank, our Federal Reserve, is basically owned and controlled by 12 banks of the Federal Reserve System. They're all in the United States. But it didn't get into individual. It just had, multi and various investments. Is how they word it. So I couldn't really.
I think they said something about Rothschild having a big, or a lot of money into like Facebook, but I don't know. It just seems like they're one of those people that pull strings on how they want people to act and the world to run. I just don't see why. I mean, do they need to keep getting money like that, or like I don't know what the benefit is really. Be able to
Well,
be the
see,
masterminds of the world, I just don't.
they they didn't mention it, but the Rothschild family has given a lot of money to charities worldwide. Well, when they give money to charities, I mean, when you give money to a charity, you have no control how that money is spent. For the most part, once in a while, you do have a say where your money goes if you're giving it to a charity. But on a whole, no. Like our office had United Way, and United Way encompasses hundreds of you know people with their hands out, or companies with their hands out. I never gave to it because I started looking into them, and I didn't even get halfway down the list that they went through, and I found corruption problems on record with a whole bunch of them. So I said, no, I'm not giving to it. I'll give to local. I'll give to where I can see the money going someplace. And, you know, I used to be, they used to try to give me a rough time in the office because I didn't give to the United Way. We were supposed to turn a card in. You're given a card, you're supposed to put a pledge on it, and either you're going to give a pledge right up front, so much money, or you're going to have so much money taken out of your paycheck every 2 weeks, whatever. And then you sign it and send it back. I used to throw it in the trash. I'm not signing it. Well, you have to. This, you know, this comes out of the main office. I said, oh, really? I said, show me in the employee handbook where I have to sign
Well, I
my
mean,
United Way pledge.
you, it's ridiculous to say that you have to do something but you have to sign for it.
Right.
if you have to do it, then you don't have to sign for it.
Right.
It's just something you have to do.
So
They force you to do it, but they're asking you to sign something, so it's like.
no, I see so the way. Well, we'll see about that. You know what? Nothing ever came of it. Nobody ever bothered me. I got
And when they
razzed
fucking.
a few times about not giving to it. And when I come right out and told them, because back then at the time, I could name the companies and I could name, some of the CEOs of them
Whoever
that
they were
were in
supposed to
trouble.
say that. Whoever they were supposed to say, well, Andy said no. I'm sure that person was like, well, it's one fucking person. You know?
Yeah, but I mean, they wanted 100% participation in it, and I was one of the ones ruining it for them. And I stood right up at some of the meetings on it and told them. I said, hey, I said, so and so on the list here is a corrupt company, and I told them how much of their dollar gets to where you think it's going. It's all this cancer research. By the time they manage the money out of every dollar you give, you're lucky if a nickel goes actually to research. Why do all these people have to have their hands in the pot? It's a free ride for somebody. I'm sorry, I work for my money.
No matter what people tell you, no matter what you see, no matter what evidence is presented to you, you will obey authority, no matter what.
How deep are we right now? My question is, you gotta ask, man. I just want to hear all the different theories that are out there. Because there's fucking shadow people out there. Aaron, it's so deep. When are you going to wake up and stop denying that there's shadow shit going on?
Come on, Aaron.
Aaron, you know what, dude? I'm giving you the knowledge. Drink from the fountain. I got the documents here, okay? I got the documents. And we are live here we're live here in the bunker. Welcome to another episode of Tinfoil Hat. I am super excited for this episode. Real quick before I bring in our guest, my new disc, the double album, The Diabolical, drops this Friday on iTunes. Everything, anywhere. You love it. 2 hours of power for the price of one. 1 hour of storytelling. I talk about being on high-speed car chases with police helicopters, doing fundraisers for rednecks who are trying to build a spaceship, all that stuff, all on one album. And then the second album is called Friday Night Late Show, and it's just me bombing at the Sacramento Punchline. Do that. And go check out Dying Laughing, the movie. It's on all video on demand. The critics love it. Out of like 52 critics, only one had somewhat negative stuff to say. All the rest, glowing praises for this movie. The alpha and the omega of stand-up docs. Please check it out. So without further ado, please welcome to my Tinfoil Hat. I've been trying to get him on for a while, and he's been busy, and luckily we could get him on right now. My good friend, who I love to death, the one, the only, Duncan Trussell, everybody. I was like, are we experiencing problems? No, that's just Duncan. Duncan, thank you for coming on Tinfoil Hat. I know you've been moving to New York. How you moved to New York? How's it going?
It's great. I love it here. I mean, we're about to get slammed with some kind of apocalyptic storm, so people are freaking out a little bit. But other than that, it's great. It's wonderful here.
Do you like snow? How are you doing with snow? Have you ever had snow?
I love it. Yeah, man. I grew up on the East Coast, so when I was growing up, we would get snow, and the part of me from when I was in public schools that would be freed from public schools, if you got the right amount of snow, it's still there. It still gets happy.
Yeah, snow days.
It doesn't affect me at all. Yeah, snow days, man. Snow days. You want to understand how fucked up public schools are on a person. The fact that somewhere inside of me there's still a sense of relief at the approach of an imminent blizzard, because when I was younger that would relieve me of having to go to a fucking penal colony for kids. It's still in there, man. It's crazy. That I don't know if you remember that specific
yeah, dude, I used to love snow days. Something that kids on the West Coast, Southwest will never understand. And most of the South, I guess in the South they get like heavy rain days or something like that, like hurricane days, obviously, and those are much worse. But snow days were gold.
Yeah. God, the best. Yeah.
So
amazing.
comedy, are you getting up in a lot of places? Is your evil plan of getting up, working on your act a lot more, is it paying off? Is it all coming together?
Yeah. Paying off, man. Yeah, definitely. I mean, stage time is the secret to comedy, right? That's why everyone is like freaks out about it. If you didn't need it, nobody would do it, probably, or they would, but here you could do, easily 3 shows a night if you want to, if you're that driven, easily. So, and good shows, or like you get to do, you get the experience of like, wait, I just had like a weird set in front of this crowd, a killer set in front of this crowd.
That's what
and then, you know what I mean? You can actually, you can evolve a joke through the night, because it could start off brand new, and by 12:45 you've got something that's like, shit, this has already got legs, and I have that in one night. So it's pretty cool. For me, just because in LA I was only going up once or twice a week at the Comedy Store, and you got to drive to get there. It's like a 50-minute drive for me. So it was just too much shit in between me and the stage out there. Whereas here, get on a train, take a nice walk, and bam, you're in this.
How you
awesome
doing with the
club,
trains? You getting it down? Moving
to New York is hell. It's hell. There's no way around it. It sucks, especially if you're moving across the country, because you have to get all your shit into a goddamn moving truck and, pay a lot of money to get hauled out. You're basically buying your stuff again.
Yes.
When you move across the country, you're just paying for your stuff twice. So you get your shit over here, but then you got to find a place. But to find a place here, you have to have a realtor. You can apparently do it without one, but it's a nightmare situation. If you get a realtor, but that costs a percentage of your rent for the year, so it's expensive as fuck. It's just expensive, man.
Everything
But once
costs.
you get in, everything costs. But once you're situated here, suddenly, like, I live right down the street from like 2 really nice grocery stores. Every restaurant is the best restaurant in LA, every one is the coolest. Some kind of Korean soul food fusion with drinks served in light bulbs. Okay, yeah, that's 2 blocks away from me. Wonderful. I'll take that. It's the best ramen you ever ate, so it's decadent and wonderful once you're here. But getting here, and the people here are really sweet. That whole fucking thing about angry New Yorkers is
it's weird.
bullshit,
it's not really
man.
there,
like,
right?
No, it's not there at all. Like, everyone feels like they're in it together here, whereas in LA, it's kind of like, because of the distance between everyone, you can really get in your own little, like, blank space, you know, and sort of not have to see human beings outside of your car window.
Especially
You know,
your
you
old
can
place.
almost manage.
Your old place was like so
Yeah.
high up in the Pasadena Hills, you literally would never have to talk to anybody if you really wanted to.
That was a problem. I mean, I wanted to see what that was like, but that was not what I wanted, I guess. But I love, so the answer, I love New York, and anyone, you should move, anyone, like, you should come out here for a few months. Anyone should who wants to do comedy, because it's so great.
Let me ask you, comedically, how are the comics treating you? Or I mean, cause go on.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask how are the comics.
Yeah,
out
are they
here.
are they
going to
cool?
say they're amazing.
Are they cool? Are they like you?
Yeah, they're great.
Have you been accepted into a bunch of scenes? I'd love to know how it went.
Well, I've been going up at the stand a bunch, and so I've been hanging out with comics out there. I've been spending a little bit of time with the Legion of Skanks guys who are fucking
cool.
hilarious, and then like they're awesome. And then I met a bunch of comics. It feels like it just reminds me of any comedian community is generally pretty cool, man. Out here in particular, like I don't know. I mean, I feel like in LA, I wasn't hanging out at the Comedy Store because I was driving, and so you gotta I don't know. There was a bunch of just shit going on there that was keeping me out of like enjoying like the community of comics as much as I do here. But yeah, it's cool, man. Yeah, so definitely just after they're sweet, man. I don't know, like. Most every comic I met out here is cool. You get in the best comedy conversations. I mean, they really take it seriously, they're working so fucking hard out. And they're not, many of them are doing comedy to do comedy.
No, that is
no,
the big difference between the two scenes. It's like it's more comedy out here, where out here it's multiple, you're working multiple disciplines.
That's right. You're working on your acting. You want to get on TV, and that's dude. Of course. I mean, Jesus. If you want to be an actor, clearly that on TV, that's the place to be. But it's nice out here because these comics, man, they're just doing comedy. They're like absorbed into the process of it, and the process of like writing. You just get into some. You know how you get in deep math comedy conversations with people sometimes.
Yes.
Like. Or some of them will like watch my set and then like I've gotten such great advice about jokes and just general like shit about like just basic like math, and it's been really useful for me. So it's glorious.
That's amazing. Podcast wise, a lot more guests probably. You have a bigger pool now of people you never drew from for the podcast. I saw you had Abby Martin on, who I'm a huge fan of, and how'd that podcast going? It's got to be cool to be getting some a new pool to draw from.
Yeah, well, that's tougher, man. I mean, that's one thing that's like in LA, like all my friends were there, and like people that know me, and that I could just be like, come over, let's do the podcast, because I've known them for years. But here, there is a little bit of extra like on my part, like a little bit of extra like nervousness or something about inviting people over, just because they don't know me as well. I don't know, man. So I've been Skyping more podcasts than doing live podcasts. Also, I didn't have my podcast studio set up fully, and I'm still not completely there yet. So I've been Skyping a lot of shows. But Abby was great. That was a controversial episode.
Why was it controversial?
Well, for two different reasons. So in that interview, as we talked, like my view on what's happening right now is that extremism manifests obviously on both sides of the political spectrum.
100%.
And that is in fact where it manifests. Yeah. So people who are like on the far left, as it's called, and those are like the Antifa people who are Marxists, and that's not like Rush Limbaugh yelling out, "You guys are fucking Marxists!" Like they're really communists. They want a violent revolution, and I say this with a little bit of authority that maybe shouldn't be there, only because in a nearby like activist bookstore, I was able to find a book from 2001 written by the Antifa, and they're they say in it we're communists, and we think it's funny that people are upset when we're breaking windows or using violence to achieve our political goals, because that's our technique. That's what we do.
Yeah.
There's no that's extremism. For them, they would say, well, yeah, it is extremism, and the reason we have to be extreme is because the current political situation in the world, where we have a corporatocracy, people who are being ground up by the gears of the corporate machine, is more violent than the intermediate violence that would be required to take the fucking thing down and reinstate, or put in for the first time for the United States a socialist / communist centralized economy. So that's extremism, and it manifests as we've seen in violence and the suppression of a person's ability to get in front of a university and spew out whatever the fuck it is they have to say. And I've always thought colleges are
supposed to be open-minded. What's your take on George Soros and his supposedly paying goons off? That a lot of this violence are paid protesters who are looking to just tarnish a movement and just cause more chaos, and not so much in what you're saying is that, a violent way to end a more violent dictatorship, but more in the sense that they're just trying to scare people at home not to join by causing pure chaos, and that everybody's on Soros's payroll.
Listen, man, unless he was like, the black bloc and those Marxists, that's been around for a long time. I don't think that's being funded.
Right.
I think that's a very real, the communists, it's really interesting, man, because the far left and the far right agree on something, which is really curious. They have a mutual enemy, which is globalism. They both don't like globalism, and but it's for different reasons, and this is why Hitler hated the fucking communists, and like was brutal in Germany to the communists, drove them out of Germany, and then invaded Russia and got his fucking ass kicked.
Yeah.
But he went in there wanting to take out communism, and so. And that's as fascist as you don't get more fascist than Hitler.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You do. You get all the other fascists, but Hitler was a fascist, and they hate the communists. The communists don't like the fucking fascists, and so it's really curious how you have these opposites that both dislike the idea of globalism, because certainly the Nazis didn't want there to be some kind of multi-ethnic global society. That would be the end of humanity as far as they were concerned. Pretty much the worst thing that could happen would be some kind of multi-ethnic cultural mixing pot where people of different races mix their genes and thus forever dilute the Aryan bloodline, which they insanely thought was supposed to be the genetic structure that was going to bring humanity into the next age of perfection, right? So and then the left, they don't want a corporatocracy. What they don't want is for capitalism to spread unfettered around the entire planet, and for the people at the head of massive corporations to have any control over laws anywhere. Much less
Right.
around the entire planet.
Yeah, a one world order. That's what they're afraid of, a one world order, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not. I don't think. Actually, I don't think it's the one world order. I think probably there's people like when you consider like Elon Musk or the idea of a Type 1 civilization, a planet joined together, utilizing all the resources on the planet, putting our heads together to like figure out how to overcome the gravity well that's keeping us stuck on the planet, so we can migrate and like go to other planets and maybe figure out a way to use technology to double the human lifespan, or all the things that could happen if an entire planet spent their time not on military budgets but on budgets for extracting resources in a environment. So if you look at that perspective, that one world order sounds great, like a Star Trek one world order.
Yes.
So everyone's smart, everyone's in some cosmic university, and we're all like, I live in the part of the world that used to be America, but now it's one planet, and it's a planet where we're all dedicated to like a life of pleasure and productivity and advancement for the species. It's some like sci-fi version of the world which we all secretly would probably want.
Yeah. Sure.
On paper, it sounds fucking great.
I think we would all be really good at getting along, loving each other. I watched Star Trek, and I think by that time, everybody's just going to be androgynous cross-dressers. So we'd be like an androgynous cross-dressing fucking society that would love each other, and just everybody would be into each other. And I see that happening eventually. I do believe in that. I think the problem is always like, I've always said this, like, if you want to bring peace together, just start getting rid of alpha males, because there's always going to be this guy who wants to rule everything, and it's always something where the powers that be get the poor to fight over nationalism, ethnic groups, and all that stuff, just to keep them from paying attention to what's really going on, a smokescreen and all that stuff. Like, oh, you can't make fun of my group, and even though like a poor man has very little. I don't care what religious group or ethnic group you are part of. A poor man has very little in common with a rich man of that ethnic group. But nationalism and just like racial pride in your group, that is, I think, a diversion from paying attention to what's really going on. And that is like there's a power group out there of people who are manipulating all of us and making us fight over dumb shit while they just fucking rape and pillage.
Well, there's a lot of, when you look at the resources of planet Earth, exploiting any resources are usually very profitable. So if I can be the person who has the technology to extract oil, and if I've got enough money to do that, I'm going to make so much money. And it goes for all resources. It's an obvious thing. Water. God, Jesus, if you can control water, shit.
That's what Nestle's trying to do right now. Nestle's trying to do that. They are taking water without permits.
Yeah, right. Water, food, anything like that. The internet, all of it's a resource that if I can control most of it, then I am going to make lots of money or have lots of power. Because people who have lots of money stop caring about the money; they want the power.
Yeah.
So the resource that you'll never really hear, even though there's in corporations, they have a fucking branch called Human Resources, HR.
Yeah.
But the human resource on planet Earth is a resource that is very, very, very powerful, and if you can control it, harvest it, make it move according to your whims, then you're going to be set. And this is the art of imperialism. This is the art of being a king, a queen, whatever the fucking thing you want to call yourself is. You're a people controller. You control the resources of the people.
Yes.
And to control the people, you have to use technology just like any other resource. And the technology is usually called propaganda. And so by using